Okay, so let me kick it off here. So essentially, I started this company I'm a former CFO. I was overseeing a $1.2 billion business. I wanted a bookcase for my house, and I was so frustrated by the experience of ordering this custom-made bookcase that when I left that company, I looked at this industry of furniture making and cabinetry, and I was just appalled at how medieval it was. Because I knew that I had been taking my sons to Maker Faire for 10 years. And so I saw this screen to machine technology, and I was overseeing mostly manufacturing types of facilities. So I knew that CNC machines, it was mature, it was widespread, and especially in the woodworking industry. And so I was shocked that no one was really deploying this technology to streamline the process of getting something made out of wood. And so when I left that company, I looked at this industry. I decided, A, it would never be able to evolve on its own for a bunch of different reasons. But there are thousands of underused CNC machines all over the country. In the cabinet makers all over the country, they're only using their CNC machines a couple of hours a day. And so the idea was, if I could create the software that translates desire and a payment into machine instructions, I could loop all these underused machines into a virtual factory. And being a CFO, I also knew that, okay, if you can produce things locally and on demand, you eliminate 60% of the industry's cost structure. And that's the business that we're building. And the byproduct of that is everyone can design on their own digitally, and it will be already pre-connected for the manufacturing at a local facility. So that's what we're presenting right now, how Baru allows for the maintenance and the control over design intent, cost control, and manufacturability, while de-risking the project because it's made locally nationwide. So the basic gist of it is, in the traditional, right now between designers, architects, and contractors and cabinet makers, there's always this issue of, okay, who controls it? Who controls the scope? Who controls the cost? Who controls the business risk? Who owns the risk? Who owns the project? Because for unique designs, what comes out of Zach's head doesn't necessarily get translated or interpreted by the manufacturer in a seamless manner. And so that's what we're doing. We're creating that direct link between desire and what a machine does. So the cabinets that we sell are for commercial and for residential use. And we can be really inventive around the cabinets to reduce cost of installation, cost of materials efficiency, as well as total cost of ownership concerns at blending that CapEx or OpEx dichotomy that normally exists when you're building a building. So what I hope to explain to y'all with this presentation is, show you how you're able to control design intent and the costs while you're reducing the project and supplier risk and fulfilling the zero net carbon design goals of AIA 2030, the 2030 commitment. So this is a 5-part presentation. The first part of the presentation is showing you how the existing industry works and why it's so inefficient, okay? And then how we're transforming the industry cost structure and the efficiency by doing that digital link with localized manufacturing, which also assures for constructability, it preserves that design intent and cost control while reducing the level of effort to place an order and receive the cabinets at the job site while supporting zero net carbon design. So The long distance supply chain accounts for 60% of the cost of goods sold in many physical goods industries, and certainly the cabinet industry, because you may be super efficient at the manufacturing level, but it touches so many hands and so many phases before it gets to a customer that it ends up being much more costly than the efficient centralized manufacturing would normally dictate. So this is a representation of that cost structure. So on the vertical, you have choice, where you have low choice and high choice. Low choice is like from mass producers where they're super efficient at producing, but it's like Henry Ford's Model T. You can get it in any color as long as it's black, right? And on the other axis, you've got price. So efficiency is associated with low price. High choice is normally associated with high price because it's less standardized. But the fallacy in efficient mass production is you add a distribution cost structure, and that's that 60% that we just talked about. Producing locally, you don't incur the distribution cost, but you have the inefficiency of the local job shop. What we've done is we've blended those two, where we've reduced the cost of distribution because we always manufacture locally nationwide, while offering a lot of the customization at a much lower price because we digitally integrated it from our e-commerce system to the local machine instructions. And as we go, as new products are asked of us, we will develop those products, engineer them, and put them on our catalog as a permanent item to select from. So the challenge with the local cabinet makers is they have very manual processes and the associated high costs, because there's no process integration between the architect or designer and the local manufacturer. It's all, it's all communications and a lot of shop drawings, redlining, review and revise and resubmit, and then the customer asks for something different, and then the et cetera, et cetera. Well, we've changed that, where if you're using our library, you can reconfigure any of the individual items in our library into millions of variants by simply changing the dimensions, the door style, the colors, the material grade, etc. And so as you're designing with our library, not only are you seeing the pricing, but you know where it's going to be made, and we have standardized timelines, and there's no additional engineering involved. So your rough design that you submit for a building permit is priced and is manufacturing ready. But 5 months down the road, when you're actually ready to finalize that elevation, you make the small tweaks, and the price will evolve a little bit, and it can go into production immediately. And because we've digitized all of that manufacturing instructions at the design front end, you don't have to consult with anyone. You don't have change orders. You don't have to wait for new information from the cabinet maker. All of that's been automated. The typical local makers are overburdened. They have manual and really, inefficient, mistake-prone processes. And that's what makes them expensive. In this case, from Omega, ordered from Indiana, it was $8,072. We produced it in San Francisco for $3,900. And our manufacturers, we paid them $125 an hour. It's the elimination of all this non-value added cost allows us to pay local wages. In this case, it was identical material. And then if you look at localization and what that does to our carbon footprint, this is a comparison of 100 kilos of cabinets sourced from Malaysia via LA to San Francisco. There's about 31 kilos of carbon that's CO2 that's emitted. Shipping from Indiana, it's 30 kilos. But shipping from within 60 miles, it's 7 kilos. And we can wipe that out by planting a tree per 100 kilos of product that we sell. And we can document that. So and then in the traditional process of custom cabinet maker, as you go back and forth to the job site, meeting with the contractor, remeasuring all of this stuff, there's a lot of CO2 emissions just from driving around. So, in this case, 200 kilos, that's 400 pounds. So that's like 35 gallons of gas just from driving around. And not to mention that, it costs you time and effort. So by digitizing everything and making it all controllable at the designer's desk, we've eliminated a lot of inefficiency around process also. So at this point, we'll do a how-to demonstration showing our technology, and then we'll go into like how does Zach use it as a practicing architect. So this is a home in Hillsborough. One of the items that homeowner wanted was a built-in bookcase. So the designer, she is able to order the bookcase in exactly the dimensions by simply changing it in our order form. She ordered the extra scribe on the right, applied end on the left, the scribe panels on the top. And if we had expanded this, you would also see that there was only a 2-inch toe kick to give it a modern look. They're going to remove all that crown moldings on the top. So the way you should approach a project if you're going to be using Baru is just have in mind our library of cabinetry. And then you should put in mind which materials you want to use and what is that budget. Because our costing is not driven by the customization. We have no upcharge for customization. It's all driven by which material are you going to use and how much of that material is being used. So simply design the elevations with the cabinet library models, completely knowing that there's no upcharge for customization. So if you're doing something really rough for the building permit, at the end of the day, you can refine that and the price will change very little. You have hundreds of cabinet models that you can start with, and any material that we can purchase, you can use for your project. And if anyone's not familiar with Shinoki, I happen to bring some samples. What Baru's process does is it avoids all of this extra effort. Someone designed it, and then I had to do takeoffs on that design, and then I had to, just do everything once at the front end and have all of the digital integration to the manufacturing and the pricing. And you can run pricing scenarios by simply changing the material. In this case, changing the material from $2.50 per square foot with no grain and a white melamine to a pre-finished plywood and a melamine also about $13 a square foot. And that causes the price update. So not only are you in control of design, but you're in control of budget. You don't have to ask anyone for permission. And then when the order is placed, it goes through a workflow. And we will open this up to all of the stakeholders in the project. So you don't have to send emails or ask anyone, okay, have all the materials been arrived? When is it going to be scheduled? All of that will be like tracked on the Domino's pizza tracker. You know where it is and is it in the oven yet? And then we work with the best manufacturers all over the country. And this is one of our manufacturers in the Bay Area, Millwork Management. So even though we're selling at a third their price, because we've eliminated so much cost from the avoidance of distribution, we can pay for their idle machine time and their standard hourly rates. And you get the quality control and processes and culture from this shop. And what's in it for them? They earn between 70 and 90% pre-tax margins, because when we send them the machine instructions and the materials, their costs are limited to electricity, screws, glue, and assembly. So they're getting really high margins, even though we're selling at a price completely divorced to what they normally sell for. I know nothing about practice.
I find that hard to believe. My name is Zach. I'm a builder, I'm a licensed architect. I am an end user of this product. I think it would be fair to tell a little bit about how I've integrated the processes of Baru and their cabinets and how it sort of benefited us. And I think it's a really amazing tool. I think it's a really amazing sell. And quite frankly, I'm a little bit mystified as to why lots of other folks are not using it, both as an architect and as a builder. So one of the things I want to go through with you guys today is to just describe what the workflow looks like, what are some of the outcomes that can be anticipated, and then also what are some of the benefits early on. I mean, how many times have you guys been in a room with a client, whether it's a residential project, single family, or a multifamily project where you're duplicating potential case goods or millwork on a large scale? Maybe it's a restaurant, maybe it's a retail space. And the first thing they ask you is, hey, we've got these great ideas. This is amazing. What do you think this is going to cost? So if we were to take this example and roll it out across a store, maybe it's a flagship, maybe they want to duplicate it across multiple different stores, and you go, I have no idea. I don't have the capacity to really understand and manage the pricing at that level, because usually the process starts with a design that then gets bid out and then goes to a mill worker, and then usually it's somewhere towards the tail end of the process that you're really ironing out what those details are. Well, with the ability with this particular project and process is we have the capacity to think through opportunities early on. So because there's a catalog, because there's a structure here, because there is a large element of customization that's built into the system, it's really easy. It's a web-based interface. You can go into the system, you can choose some basic parameters, you can pick some general cabinets. Imagine going through sort of a concept design, schematic level study of how you're going to lay out a kitchen, or how you're going to lay out a bank of cabinets to support a conference room, something like this, as a banquette, whatever it may be. You can quickly iterate through a multitude of different options and immediately get a sense of price. You could start out with the cheapest option and may not even know what that is, and you could even pick the most expensive option and may not know what that is. But understand, here's a simple bracketed understanding of where we are from a cost perspective. So that's huge. So even early on, you can test some design ideas and get a quick sense of cost without having to commit necessarily to anything. One of the issues that I've experienced on case goods and cabinets, really from single family all the way through multifamily projects over time, is that by the time you go from those early concept design studies all the way through production, procurement, and by the time they get assembled and installed on site, is you never really end up what you intended to get from day one. And if you do, number one, there was a little bit of a miracle that happened because communication was perfect. Nothing sort of slipped through the cracks. Number two, you had to go through a process of countless red lines, countless submittals, countless iterative communication back and forth, that if you were to look at that holistically and break it down to how many hours that took in terms of the design process, and on the PM side of the contractor, and then back in the back office of the fabricator to get to that place, you'd probably be amazed at how much effort actually went into that just to get what was a really simple idea, a really simple concept, into production to produce and get installed. We would like to avoid that. So there are ways to do it. And then I think Tino spoke to this a little bit earlier, but what happens when you find something that is outside the catalog? We're architects, we're designers. Very rarely are we picking anything out of a catalog that just happens to fit perfectly. And I think what they have set up, which is really wonderful, and because of the local sort of fabrication component, is if you want to do something that's different, you can. You start with a baseline, come up with that concept, you build it as you would in any other sort of 3D imaginative space, whether that's in Rhino or SketchUp or wherever it may be, and you present it, you get as close as you can, and then you actually formulate a strategy or a pipeline of deciding, defending what you want to pursue with. You provide a little bit of additional context, force that communication with Baru and the back-end engineering, and the next thing you know, they've implemented that as a catalog item that could then be replicated and used by other folks. So there is nothing that's really constraining in terms of design development within the system. So even though you may think of a traditional base cabinet that may be used in a typical way, you could use that same box, no pun intended, to really create a whole host of different design opportunities and thoughts. From what I've experienced, the takeaways of using Baru's system and implementing it early on has been really fruitful to, number one, get a better sense of cost. You're not able to really understand the installation component, but you're going to understand what the goods cost. And not only that, but you can iterate on the changes and the customization aspect, the materials, what's the size, very, very, very easily, rapidly, and you're able to use that information as you need. Number two, you can expedite those design decisions. You don't have to wait. You don't have to sort of act in a box and then go out and have them priced, way down the road and then come back to go, well, I had no idea. I had no idea that we were looking at a situation that was going to be 3x or 4x the cost that we were anticipating. So now we're having to go back and value engineer the heck out of the design intent. Which leads to number three, it allows you to actually maintain that design intent because you already have a base case. You know kind of where you stand from day one in terms of cost. And then that allows you to sort of maintain a little bit of that control. Number four, consistent accuracy. You don't have to worry about a misinterpretation of how the machine, or in this case, how the instructions are misinterpreting what your design intent is. Once you've built it, once it's live in the system, once you've received that price, that's what it is. So if anything changes, you can make those changes, and then you can see that refined accuracy. It's there. There's no sort of human error component to this that all of a sudden can drive miscommunication. Number five, which to me I think is one of the most important aspects of this, both from a community support and then also from a fabrication standpoint, is no matter where you are in the country, Baru has established relationships with local fabricators. So it doesn't matter if you're based in San Francisco or the Bay Area and you're doing a project in New York, there's an opportunity to work with a local fabricator that is already part of the Baru team and the Baru network. So that way, those cabinets, those pricing that you're looking at is true to the area and is true to what you're going to see. Again, you're not having to go to the Midwest. You're not having to go out of country to support the fabrication and the production of these elements. You're able to get them local by folks that are being utilized across our industry for local facets. And that also leads into number six, which is ease of shipping. I'm sure everybody's heard the horror stories of things getting stuck in a box going across the pond that then takes 8 weeks and never arrives. And then when it does arrive, it's broken or it's shattered in pieces. Knowing that you're working with a local fabricator and the products that you have purchased are then being delivered directly from that fabrication facility to the job site or to the house or wherever it may be that these things are being implemented or installed is peace of mind. Alleviating the need for a third party to sort of participate in that process was a really wonderful thing. And then I think lastly, it's simple. You don't have to go through a lot of different steps. You don't have to talk to 4 or 5 different people downstream to get a really simple, small product. You can do it yourself. You can calibrate it yourself. And then ultimately you can push order and you can pay for it yourself. So not only is this tool designed to work for anybody. Architects, designers, builders, homeowners can participate in this process too. This is not something that's exclusive necessarily to just the design space. And that is it. Questions?